Good afternoon. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to this afternoon's Board Executive Committee of the East Bay Regional Park District for Thursday, May 7th, 2020. We're starting at about 12:31. And I would like to ask the committee secretary to call the roll, please.
Okay, President Corbett?
Here.
Director Rosario?
Here.
Director Reeskamp?
Here.
Okay, Park District staff, we have Robert Doyle, General Manager. Dr. Anna Alvarez.
Present.
Deborah Ocker.
Here.
Christina Kelchner.
Here.
Lisa Gorgon.
Here.
Brian Holt.
Here.
Ren Bates.
Here.
Devin Reef.
Here.
Edward Willis.
Here.
And we also have Dave Druckhammer.
Here.
Mary Mattingly. Devin Reef.
Here.
Edward Willis. And support staff, we have Yolanda Barrio-Knight, Clerk of the Board.
Here.
Matthew James, Administrative Analyst.
Devin Reef.
Here.
Talarico, Chief of Staff.
And support staff, we have Yolanda Barrio-Knight, Clerk of the Board.
Robin Weems from Prime Gov.
Here.
Devin Reef.
Here.
Talarico from Prime Gov.
And
And then
Robin.
Myself, Becky Pang, as the recording secretary.
Robin, we're getting some feedback.
Yes, we're getting an echo. So if the technical people can remedy that, please.
Working on it now.
I'm going to wait for a moment and you can let us know when it's done.
Should be clear to go for the folks that are operating their computers right now. If you're attempting to watch this on YouTube, please mute the audio from the YouTube playback so you don't get crosstalk in your microphone. Thank you. You're clear to go.
Okay, everybody heard that? Please mute your YouTube. Thank you all very much. So thank you for the roll call. All members of the committee are here. And today's meeting is held in accordance with Governor Newsom's executive order allowing for board members to participate in standing committee meetings remotely. We're providing live audio and video streaming today, and we have provided the public an opportunity to email or call in prior to the meeting for public comment. The information for participation is found on the agenda on our district website, which is at ebparks.org. May I ask members of the committee, do you have any questions about the procedures for today's meeting?
No.
Everybody's good? Okay, thank you so much. So let's go ahead on to our agenda. The first item on the agenda today is, let me just turn the page here, sorry. First item on the agenda today is something long anticipated, our Concord Hills Regional Park Land Use Plan. And would you like to introduce that, AGM Kelchner?
Thank you, Director Corbett. Yes, this is a long-awaited item. The Concord Hills Regional Park, which is its working title, will be a 2,400-acre new regional park, and it has been in the works for at least 15 years, maybe longer. And it is a public benefit conveyance from the Navy, the federal government, to the National Park Service, and then on to the district for the creation of a new regional park. And I'd like to turn it over to our Chief of Planning, Brian Holt, and also one of our senior planners, Devin Reef, who are going to present this item. And just a big congratulations to Brian, who has been personally working on this project for over 14 years. So this is certainly a significant milestone today.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Christina, and members of the executive committee. Yes, Brian Holt, Chief of Planning and GIS, and proud to be here today. Happy to bring this to this milestone. Adoption of a land use plan for a new 2,500-acre regional park would be a significant milestone anytime. But even more so today at this point in history when there's global recognition of the value of parks and open space and the essential service that open space provides to the health of our community. So this project has been a huge part of my professional life for the past 15 years. I want to acknowledge the leadership of our general manager, Robert Doyle, who has guided me closely on this throughout that time, and the leadership of Director Lane, who has been a champion of this project from the very beginning. I also want to acknowledge our partnership with the National Park Service, the City of Concord, and the Navy. We wouldn't be able to be here today if it wasn't for them, and just all the staff of the district. But I particularly want to recognize Principal Planner Devin Reef, who's going to be giving the presentation today. He, as I have stepped into the chief role here and have taken additional responsibilities, Devin has picked up this project and is really bringing it over the finish line. And it's his professionalism and tact and thoroughness on this project that I think has gotten us here today. So thank you, Devin, and I will hand it over to him.
Thank you, Brian. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Devin Reef. I'm the principal planner with the Park District, here to bring you a presentation, as Brian said.
Devin, I think we're having some trouble with your microphone.
I think so.
Brian, can you hear me now?
That is clear. Thank you.
Okay, I'll begin the presentation, and please let me know if you need me to repeat anything.
Thank you.
So the new regional park is approximately 2,500 acres of the former Concord Naval Weapons Station, shown here in green. It is, of course, in the city of Concord at the eastern edge. It bounds the city of Pittsburgh. There are views to the Delta, views to Mount Diablo, connections to Black Diamond Mines Regional Preserve, and future connections to other regional trails and other regional resources. The park history is mostly well known. I'll just quickly go over some of the details. The land used for the future Concord Naval Weapons Station, now to be a regional park, really began during World War II, after Pearl Harbor, where the Navy established a munitions storage depot. After the terrible tragedy of the explosions in 1944 at Port Chicago, the Navy needed to include new lands for safe handling, and that's when the land that will become the regional park was acquired in 1945. And really for the next several decades, the Navy used the weapons station as a base until it was decommissioned in the 90s and officially closed in 2005. The city of Concord began its planning efforts after and adopted still the current land use plan there, the project area plan, in 2012, which identified a portion of the land to be a future regional park. And in 2019, 2,200 acres of that, what are called the inland area, was transferred from the Navy to the National Park Service for use as a regional park by the Park District. The land use plan, which guides the future development of this park, has been in the works for at least 5 years. And as Brian has mentioned, the planning for this park has really been ongoing for the last 15 years. So we released in October the draft land use plan. It was developed over those years with close coordination with the Navy, the National Park Service, the regulatory agencies, and of course the City of Concord, as well as nonprofit groups and other advocacy organizations. The main goal of the plan is to maximize resource conservation while protecting public access to this land, which has been effectively a military base for the last 70 years. The vision here is for an outstanding regional park to balance the redevelopment that the city of Concord has at their portion of the former weapons station. They've got a very ambitious plan for 13,000 housing units, millions of square feet of commercial and office space, as well as higher education and their own park system. The goal here is to create a model for resilience of how to turn a landscape that had been militarized into a biological habitat hotspot again. We want to provide a platform for constructive and creative reuse of these former military sites and share the site's historic and ecological stories. The goals for the plan will affect that vision. Biological resources. We have threatened species here, which we'll talk about. We've got cultural and historic resources here that we need to protect and interpret. A circulation system to bring this to the public as a place of safety. We've got recreation and education facilities we want to build, and of course, interpretive facilities to tell those stories. The park really is a protected space. 95% of the land of that 2,500 acres will be in what are called natural units to protect some of the threatened species here. You see in the top right, California tiger salamander, you see Alameda whipsnake, and California red-legged frog. All are either present on the site or their habitat is present. So there's the biological resource protection component here, which has been agreed to by the city and the regulatory agencies and ourselves and the Navy. We'll be limiting public access in certain areas with those protected species. The park is also a cultural space. On the top right is a picture of one of the 75 weapons magazines, which are going to be repurposed, some of which will be repurposed for locations such as picnic sites, sites for arts or cultural expression, or even natural habitat. We have protection of known and historic archaeological resources that we need to protect and interpret when possible. And we have native heritage and living history that we need to protect and interpret. One of the key features of the park will be a visitor center, which is going to be a joint operation between East Bay Regional Park District and the National Park Service, our close partners with this. The story of Port Chicago will be the story of the explosion, the sailors, and the civil rights victories which followed from the mutiny trial, the appeal, and the stories of the sailors who died and those who survived, and the changes that the civil rights victories that resulted from the terrible tragedy in the 1940s, and how those are still felt today. And that's what this visitor center will be telling the story of, as well as Diablo Valley history. Here's a rendering of the visitor center and a map. Fundraising for this will begin with our partners at the Regional Park Service and our Regional Park Foundation. The park as an accessible space. The park will be accessible via the North Concord BART station through a trail. There will be connections to regional trails throughout. Here are some of them: Black Diamond Mines, the De Anza National Historic Trail, and the Mount Diablo Creek Regional Trail, as well as accessible space inside the park itself. Future trails, we're looking at over 22 miles of trails and roadways. We're going to be converting the military roads to trails. We're going to remove some of the railroad tracks and make that trails. We'll be building some new hiking trails, and there will be accessible trails for people with all abilities inside the park. Some of the public amenities, camping and picnic sites, something we're calling the Diablo Center, which will be a new facility to provide opportunities for special events away from the main sections of the park, and a community orchard in the south of Bailey Road area. Of course, with the COVID-19 crisis, we'll be rethinking these public spaces in guidance with our community health partners and the county and the state. So in the end, the park is an ambitious plan for facilities, infrastructure, and amenities over the next few decades. The south of Bailey Road area will be projected to open first. I don't know if you can see my cursor here, but this is the south of Bailey Road area. This is the part of the park that we're going to work on to open to the public first. There was robust community engagement over the last 5 years, probably even longer if you count back to the participation the park district has had with the city's process. Most recently, we had in October a community open house, which are these photographs. We had about 100 people out on the site. Back in July, we had about 600 or 700 people with the Park Service and Navy signing ceremony, the conveyance ceremony. We recently had our park naming surveys online, which we'll talk about in just a minute. And we did have some land-based tours for the public scheduled before the COVID crisis started. We will look to reschedule those if allowed in the fall. There was its own environmental review. We had our own environmental impact report based on studies done for the plan and our own studies with a consultant team. We had public comment period and received about 7 comments. In the end, no significant unavoidable impacts were found that couldn't be mitigated with implementing the plan, and the final EIR and the response to comments were published on May 1st. So now I'm going to begin to talk about the naming process. I've talked about the land use plan and the EIR. The Park District has had for 15 years or so a policy for naming. It's here on the screen. This guides the names of parks and park features, looking at history, topographics, culture, animal life, biology. There is also a naming process, and today is May 7th, the Board Executive Committee. The process is for the Board Executive Committee to make a recommendation.
Devin,
Yes,
may I stop you just for a moment? Pardon my interruption.
sure.
On the agenda, we have the land use plan and the naming selection as 2 separate agenda items. So I thought we might pause for just a moment to see if board members have any questions or comments regarding your presentation on the land use plan first before you continue on the naming selection.
Sure, let me stop sharing my screen and we will talk.
Thank you very much. So directors, we just had an excellent presentation on the land use plan by Devin, and appreciate a really important, robust public process. And just like to stop for a moment to see if you have any questions for Devin or any comments about the land use plan. Yes, Director Wieskamp.
I really appreciate how much fellow board member Beverly Lane has been involved in this. I suspect she's listening today, very thoughtfully, I'm sure. And I appreciate all the staff work that's gone into this. This is a very unusual acquisition, to put it mildly. It was a great opportunity, and I appreciate all the hard work staff and Beverly particularly have done in working with the city of Concord on a national basis, getting this brought into us. And it just looks like it's going to be such an advantage for the communities of Concord and Pittsburgh. I wonder how much public access is envisioned coming from Pittsburgh, if any. Do they have any public parks where they have views of the area that are particularly good? I really don't know. So it's maybe off track a little, but I'm interested in what's happening from the Pittsburgh perspective also.
I can, yeah, Brian, why don't you?
Okay, I appreciate the question, Director Wieskamp, and very interested in future connections to the city of Pittsburgh. As you may be aware, there has been longstanding development proposals on the east side of the hills. The boundary of our park is actually the city limits are coterminous between the city of Concord and the city of Pittsburgh. So we have provided comments on past projects in that area. We continue to monitor, continue to have meetings on that, and we'll continue to work to identify any opportunities to provide those connections over to Pittsburgh.
Do you think there's an opportunity for trail connections, or are the hills too much? I don't know.
I would say yes, I think there are opportunities for trail connections.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Director Wieskamp. Director Rosario?
Yes. Am I there? Okay.
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Excellent report. I just have a couple of questions. One is under the cultural resources and tribal cultural resources. It states that we'll be working with a consultation of Native American tribal representatives. Do we have Native American tribal representatives working with us now?
Thank you for the question. We are in discussions now with several different tribal representatives, specifically about the naming, but there is a archaeological site that we've identified in the chapter of the EIR that's relevant, the chapter on cultural and tribal resources. And so those conversations have sort of just started to take place, and they're being coordinated now.
Okay.
Yes, I'll leave it with that.
Okay.
So
great.
if I could just, Director Rosario, if I could just add on that, I just want to make sure the tribal consultation, there was a extensive tribal consultation process that happened under Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, and that was led by the Navy as part of their conveyance process. So we did enter into a Section 106 memorandum of agreement with the state Office of Historic Preservation, the Navy, the City of Concord, and some different tribal representatives regarding just long-term protection of some of the native features on the property. So that process was separate from the land use plan, but it's all integrated into the land use plan. So the conversations have been going on for a decade at least.
Okay, great, thank you. And also, there was a couple of comments from the City of Concord regarding the need for a change in zoning, and with the city's part having that looks like they're going to have to renegotiate their parts. Is that going to hold us? Is that going to hold that that rezoning piece? Is that going to hold us up from developing our park here?
Oh, thank you for that question. Yeah, you're referring to letters, the comment letter that the City of Concord gave to our environmental impact report, where they noted that their current zoning for this property, it is in the City of Concord, is a sort of a placeholder zone. They call it a study zone that is intended to change at the point when a park is created. And so that rezoning does need to happen. And we've acknowledged that in our response to comments, and that'll be one of the many things that we're negotiating with and discussing with the City of Concord. As for the development there at the City of Concord and their master developer agreement, we don't see that it will stop the park district from beginning implementation if the board does take action. We think we can move forward with the park planning and some of the first implementation steps we need to do, specifically down in the south of Bailey Road area. But many projects that are still to come, and we'll be working closely with the city on those.
Okay. And then my last question is regarding the need for power and the possibility for going solar with a lot of our, especially with the creation of the visitor center and the Diablo Center. Because I think we were with the city development side of the, we were kind of depending on power being extended from the city project into the park. And I think with that, with the city's project being on kind of hold, it would, I think, would be a great opportunity for us to develop more plans for solar for all those facilities. So it's just an opportunity.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we will definitely be looking into it closely with our operations folks.
Great, and I really the other utility that caught my eye was the placement of the water tank and how that will affect. So, but that's to be determined still. So that'll be interesting as well. But thank you very much. I think this is well thought out, and I thank everyone, all the stakeholders, and the city, and everyone for their participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Rosario. My comments would just be appreciate the thoroughness and the attention to detail that has gone into the land use plan, and obviously the production of the environmental impact report. This is a significant piece of property and very large open space in an urban area with lots of very important history. And I appreciate the fact that that has been touched on throughout the two documents that we're looking at today, and appreciate obviously to the sensitivity to the biological resources on the site and the historical and cultural resources on the site as well. So I don't really have any questions except to say that I think this very, very well done, and many, many years and hours of time have been involved in the development of this. And the action before us today would be to recommend to the full board the certification of the environmental impact report, and also the adoption of the land use plan for the park. And I do see that the general manager has a few comments he'd like to make.
Thank you very much, and thank you to staff. In addition to acknowledging all the work from Director Lane, I think the story of this park is also interesting for this board and for the public. When I proposed this as a park in our master plan amendment, it was a controversial issue at the time. And without the support of actually 3 different Congress members. First, I want to acknowledge Ellen Tauscher, who was the first Congress member who at that time had Concord. Then Congressman John Garamendi had Concord. And finally, George Miller brought it home and was the avid supporter of creating a park here, which was controversial at the beginning. A lot of the development interests and economic interests wanted to see more development. So I really want to, this is a great opportunity to acknowledge our federal support to create a park on federal property, and also our national park partners. So I think that's an important part of the record, that we had 3 different Congress members getting their congressional districts changed throughout the life of this planning process and proposal. So I just wanted to acknowledge their support. We could not have done it without them. There was a lot of pushback setting this much land aside, and getting half of the naval interior land of the Naval Weapons Station was really a big push, and we're really pleased with the kind of support we had at the federal level. Thank you.
And before asking for a motion, I would also like to recognize all of the great work of Director Lane, who has been overseeing it that entire time, I believe. She's lasted longer than 3 members of Congress, and has done an excellent job of reminding us of the importance of history that comes along with the use and the stewardship of land. So appreciate you, Beverly, for all of that work. And one last thing I'd like to say, one of the things I so admire about the Park District, it has the ability to move forward the promise of base reuse. We've done this on other sites, and we'll continue to do this on other sites as well, where land is given back to the people after its use as military facilities in a very important way. And the Park District is part of that legacy into the future, so that this land can be appreciated and used by all. So it's a very important thing we get to do here, and very proud to be just a little part of that. So with that, I'll take a motion to adopt both or move forward to the full board our land use plan and our draft EIR, our documents that we all poured over. Would anybody like to make that motion to move these two documents forward for full review to the full board?
Director Corbett, before you ask for a motion, I would like to read one public
Oh,
comment
yeah.
we received on this.
Thank you very much. Yes, public comments, please.
You're welcome. We received a comment from Scott Williams from Brentwood, California. He would like the board to consider allowing paragliding at the site. It is almost 4 miles long, has a great ridge line and good wind. It is an excellent place to allow this use. The Park District currently allows paragliding at Mission Peak Regional Park.
Thank you very much, Secretary Feng. Appreciate that very much. And before, again, we go to the motion, can people still email in public comments at this point?
At this time, the public comment period has closed.
Okay, thank you very much. But people do know where to find us if they'd like to express their opinion. As I've mentioned before, our emails are all online, so please let us know if you have additional thoughts. So with that, who would like to make the motion? Director Wieskap, is that you? Moved by Director Wieskap and seconded by, must be Director Rosario. All right, so roll call on the motion. Director Wieskap.
Aye.
Director Rosario.
Aye.
Director Corbett, aye. So that's unanimously recommended to move forward to the full board. Thank you all very much.
Beverly in the background is saying yes.
Yes. Beverly, I hope you're smiling. Okay. All right, Devin, if you could please proceed with the naming report. Thank you.
Yes, I will. Naming a park, of course, is a fundamental part of creating a new park, and the Park District has had a naming policy since 2004. It's here on the screen. It really looks at natural features, cultural features, historic features, and selects a name from among those themes. There is a naming process, and today's meeting of the Board Executive Committee is part of that. Here we are on May 7th, where the Board Executive Committee makes a recommendation. The Park Advisory Committee will meet on May 18th and consider that recommendation, either agree or disagree, in which case the Board Executive Committee will hear the Park Advisory Committee's recommendation, but ultimately it's the Board of Directors who makes the decision on a park name. We had a great response in February and March of this year with 4 different surveys, and we thank our partners at the City of Concord, City of Pittsburgh, Save Mount Diablo, the nonprofit organization, and our own public affairs folks for putting out an online public survey that asked the public what they would like to see the park be named. Here were the names that were selected to be chosen from: Concord Hills Regional Park, Concord Naval Weapons, Delta Hills, Delta View, Diablo Creek, Diablo Valley, Diablo Vista, Los Medanos, Meridian Hills, Monte del Diablo, Todos Santos, and other was an opportunity for the public to choose their own name. So the top voted names amongst those 1,200 voters was Concord Hills, Los Medanos, Monte del Diablo, and Meridian Hills. And I'm going to take just a minute to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of some of those. Concord Hills Regional Park is the name that we have given as a working name for the last 7 years or more to this land, to this park effort. It's been the placeholder. The advantage here is that it's a straightforward name. It lets people know where they are and what they can expect from the park. The disadvantage is that the name was made up for the planning process, and it's not a recognized geographic name. Also, it is Concord-centric in that it doesn't reflect the regional nature of the land here in the park. Monte del Diablo Regional Park. This is the name of the 1830s Mexican land grant, land which is today the city of Concord. The advantage here is that it recognizes the Mexican history of the land. The disadvantage is that the name may be confused with nearby Mount Diablo State Park. And also there is some history here behind the choosing of the name Monte del Diablo, which I can go into if the committee is interested. The third name that was selected was Los Medanos Regional Park. And this is another Mexican land grant, which today includes the areas that we know as Pittsburgh, Antioch, and Bay Point. This is also the name that's widely recognized for the hills that are part of the park and the hills that are between Concord and Pittsburgh. The advantage here is that the name is widely recognized as the geography of that hill range. The disadvantage is that the future park is not actually on the land that was part of the Rancho Los Medanos. Also, that name is now primarily associated with Pittsburgh, specifically the Los Medanos College in Pittsburgh. And the public had many different names that they suggested. There were over 100 different names shown here on this word cloud. There were names that honored the military history, the native people, names for local luminaries and people associated with the military base. There was definitely a lot of interest in native names, including Chupcan, which are the name of the native Bay Miwok people who lived in the area we know as Concord. Miwok, Bay Miwok, Volvins Miwok, and Ohlone were some of the names suggested. The Park Advisory Committee had an informational meeting last week where they did their own exercise to select a name. And Concord Hills and Delta View were two of the names that got the most votes. Other was also a top vote getter. And in the other category, the Park Advisory Committee members strongly suggested that a native name be selected after consultation with native people prior to the park naming. I should mention that the city of Concord just on Tuesday had a vote, and they recommended to the board of directors that Concord Hills Regional Park be the name of the park. And that's a letter that the board directors have received from the city of Concord. So we want to thank the city for taking the time out of their agenda to make that recommendation. In terms of a native name, the staff has begun the process to speak with two different groups of two different tribes, two different groups of native representatives to start to understand their perspective. The names suggested were not necessarily coming from native representatives, and we were very sensitive to not wanting to select a name that did not have the participation of native people who have, of course, lived in this area for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So that process has just begun, and we will continue to discuss with native people their suggestions for a park name. In terms of adopting the land use plan and selecting a name, here are the key dates. Today, of course, is May 7th. The Park Advisory Committee will meet on May 18th, where they will take up their recommendation for the land use plan and EIR and suggest a name. And then we are scheduled to go to the board of directors on June 2nd for final approval of the land use plan, the EIR, and a park name. People can find more information on our project webpage at the Park District. And of course, I'm available for information as well. Thank you for your consideration, and I look forward to the discussion about the park name.
Thank you very much, Devin. And again, a very wonderful and very thorough report and presentation on this really important decision. No pressure, right? So I think I will open it up. If you can stop sharing the screen so I can see board members. Thank you so much. Who would like to make comment? Director Rosario?
Start with, I saw him nod. Start with D.
Yes, we'll start with D as soon as he turns his
Okay.
mic.
All right. Getting used to this. Yeah, thank you for this report. The naming is always very difficult. And one question I have is how, I mean, yes, we have to have, do we have to have, absolutely have to have a name by the June 2nd board meeting?
That's an excellent question. I don't, the working name of Concord Hills has worked so far, and maybe I would defer to Brian to respond.
Yeah, I'm happy to respond. So staff brought the name forward at this time as in a pre-COVID world. It was thought that that this would be the opportunity that there would be the most public interest and most public input in selecting a name, as opposed to say adopting the land use plan and then selecting a name at a later date as we get closer to opening up the park or something along those lines. I think staff feels that we have gotten really substantial public input, as Devin mentioned, over 1,200 responses to our survey, input from the city of Concord and others. So we feel like we have accomplished our goal of hearing from the public. As Devin mentioned, we are interested in continuing conversations with Native people around Native names, but there's no reason why the board, it is up to the board to decide if you want to select a name now or at a later date. We are interested in, of course, moving forward the land use plan and the EIR, but there's nothing critical about selecting a name now. That's at the board's discretion.
Yeah, the reason I asked the question was I really would like to hear the comments from the Native American people and their perspective, and then if they decline to name a park after a tribe or a Native American name, then I'm kind of drawn towards the Los Medanos, just because that is the historical name of the hills inside the park, and it would respect both both regions of Concord and Pittsburgh. And then the third intriguing name for me is the Thurgood Marshall, and it's because out of this tragic event out of the Concord Naval Weapons Station, Thurgood Marshall was a significant leader in the movement for civil rights and in this case. So those are my preferences, but I am open. I'm only one of 7 directors, but I really would like to hear the perspective from the Native Americans. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Rosario. Director Wieskamp?
Well, I think much the same. I like the idea of this Native American name, but I think it's very important to get their perspective on it. Could somebody, if you're referring, they're always talking about the hills. This is a wide open, is it a plain? Is it a valley? Is this necessarily go talk about the hills, or could it talk about a valley or a plain? I'm asking the question, anybody who feels like they know the answer.
It's probably all of the above.
I'm thinking like the Ohlone Wilderness is very descriptive to me of what it is. And I'd like to do the same thing here. Yes, you can see Mount Diablo, but there's a lot of Diablo all over. I think Los Medanos is very melodic. It's a beautiful word, and it seems to be what everybody talks about in reference to those hills. So I like that name too. I think I would like something that's local. I certainly have a lot of respect for Marshall and what he did and accomplished. But I think if we could get something related to the Native Americans, I think that would be just a great thing to do in this area. That would be my first choice. So I just didn't wait until we've got further input from them. That's my.
Thank you very much, Director Wieskamp. Devin, did you want to respond to that before I say something? Or?
No, I appreciate that, the thoughtfulness of that response.
Thank you very much. I think we're all spending too much time together because we're starting to think alike.
Too much zooming.
Even at the time we're spending together is in these little boxes. But I too, I'm very interested in hearing us complete the conversation with the indigenous people who were on this land long before all of us. I think it's a really important policy to consider, the initial or earliest history, along with, of course, making sure we acknowledge the rich history over the many years on this site. I think that's one reason why this is making it difficult to think of the most appropriate name, because there is so much history on this, really beautiful parcel of land. And I do recognize in the land use plan we just adopted, there's plenty of opportunities within the land use to recognize important parts of the history. So, but the name will be so important as we name this very large parcel of property in the middle of a major metro area. So I'm having a tough time with this too. I would say that I very much would like to wait until we have a little more opportunity to discuss with the indigenous people a name. I do like the idea too that it has some touch on the geography of the area, as you were discussing, Anne, or some sort of touch on the actual physical attributes. I think there should be something in the title that is descriptive. And I very much believe that either in the title or very strongly in the rest of the development of the plan, that we must recognize the terrible tragedy, which I know there's already a national recognition on the site, but also the important role and change that came as a result of that in civil rights and the work of Thurgood Marshall as the attorney for the sailors, as he was very involved with the NAACP at that time. So, I know I've given a really clear direction there, but those are the things that are most important to me. I would like to suggest, since the question's already been answered, that we move the land use plan forward to the board, and the name doesn't have to be adopted at the same time as the adoption of the land use plan. I would just like to recommend that we have an opportunity. I know people will be interested in seeing this move to the full board, but I would like an opportunity for the executive board to have executive committee to have just a little bit more discussion, maybe at our next meeting, in recognition of all of our thoughts and concerns about hearing a little bit more about our conversations with the indigenous people. And that would maybe give us a little more time to reflect on, some of the important names that have been brought before us. I kind of like the Delta View name as well, because it is quite descriptive and it allows us an opportunity to then interpret the many different parts of history within the site itself. But because it sounds kind of sort of poetic to me, Delta View. But that would be my thought, that we ask for this to come back one more time to this committee, so that we have an opportunity to get more information with regard to suggestions recognizing the indigenous people who were on this land long before all of the rest of us. That's my thought at this point. Director Wieskamp.
Do we have an idea if we could accomplish our goal by the next meeting, or will it take longer than that? And I'll trust Brian or Devin to tell us. Should we give them a little more time?
What do you think, Brian? I do understand that there might be we might want to sort of set our own deadline on that as well, that we'd like to hear back from the people you're having conversations with within, a month or 2 months before we move on. I think that should be a piece of it as well.
Yeah, I think, certainly on our side, on the staff side, we can be prepared to bring it back whenever, but I don't know how quickly we'll be able to get input from different Native people and how much we can engage in that. And of course, I want to be respectful of whatever they're dealing with in their own lives as part of this whole COVID situation. So, I think having some time for us to be able to have a robust conversation would be good. So maybe next meeting might be a little rushed.
Okay, but perhaps we could, as we get closer to the next meeting, we can check in with you and see if it's ready to go. Okay, Director Rosario?
Yes, I just want to add that I think no matter what name we have or choose, I think adding the name or the title Memorial Park would also pay tribute to the sailors that died at that event, and just like we do have at Crown Memorial.
Yeah.
I think something to consider.
I like that.
I think that's good.
Yeah, I think that's very nice.
Zooming too much together.
And I think what we're experiencing is also what the public experienced as they weighed in. And thank you very much, by the way. I think you have conducted a really great public process for input on names. And I think that was very thorough. But the fact that there were so many check boxes on other, I think that also sort of tells us and guides us that this is a really important decision with a lot of thought needs to go into it. And I appreciate all the thought that has gone into it so far. So board members, if you have, or committee members, if you have any other comments or questions, we can take them, or we could perhaps put this over to the next meeting with a request of staff to come back to us with, if it's ready to come back to us in a month, and have them let us know how it's going with the conversations with the Indigenous people.
If it's ready, yes, but give them another month if that will help us. It's so difficult for people to get together. So I would say up to 2 months.
Yes, does that sound? And I think I think we should give staff the time they need, but I think also we should sort of put our own deadline on hearing back as well if we can, so it doesn't slip too far into the future.
That would also make it better for who we're talking to say we must have it back to the exact within 2 months, and maybe that would help pull them together and do it.
Yeah, in recognition with all the
Right.
new way of life we are all experiencing. Yes. Director Rosario, do you have any other comments on that? Sounds good to you?
And President Corbett, I would just like to inform the
Yes, public comment.
Public comments on this matter.
Thank you so much.
The first one is from Tina Seagrove. She would like to express her endorsement for the naming of the old Concord Naval Weapons Station in 2 ways. One, in honor of the Indigenous people who initially lived on these lands, and 2, in honor of the many sailors, merchant seamen, and civilians who lost their lives during the Port Chicago disaster. The second public comment is from the city of Concord, which I believe everyone received the letter. And the city of Concord discussed the matter, and they would like they unanimously recommend Concord Hills as the naming for this new park.
Thank you very much. That sounds about right. All right. All right, so with that, I think then we don't really need a motion, but we'll ask that this come back to our next meeting if it's ready to go, with the direction of hearing back from the Indigenous peoples and continuing those conversations. Sound good, everybody?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you all very much. Devin or Brian, any closing comments?
No, just thank you very much. Appreciate your support.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you very much.
You certainly gave us all the options we needed in background to attempt to make a decision today. So thank you for that.
Yes.
All right.
I second.
Thank you very much. All right. So our next item 4 on the agenda is a report on the repair of the swim lagoon at Contra Loma Regional Park. And I see the GM. I think he would like to make some opening remarks on that.
Thank you very much, President Corbett, members of the board. Contra Loma is a very, very important regional recreation facility. In fact, it was built over a summer in the 1960s after riots had occurred after the assassination of Martin Luther King at that time. And the federal government, through the Park District's efforts, gave us the money to take a reservoir that was almost desert-like and overnight turn it into a tree-planted park facility. And that early history was open water swimming in the lake. About 15 years ago, the Contra Costa Water District, as part of the Los Vaqueros project in eastern Contra Costa County, changed the purpose of Contra Loma as part of that system. Contra Loma was 3 days of emergency water through the Bureau of Reclamation and leased to the Contra Costa Water District. They built Los Vaqueros Reservoir to have a longer emergency supply, but also to blend the water in the season when it was less salty in the winter and be able to store a large amount of water. As part of doing that large plumbing process, it made Contra Loma a primary water source rather than a storage for emergency. That required them to regulate the lake as if it was drinking water. And so they informed the East Bay Regional Park District, Pat O'Brien and myself at the time, that there would no longer be any swimming at Contra Loma. You can imagine that surprise and that reaction. What ensued for about 5 years was a struggle to come up with a solution that would still allow this major recreation facility to have swimming and resolve the conflict with the water district over open water swimming in the lake. What happened with that is that the water district, again, this was a federal ownership, with very strong support from Congressman George Miller, was required to replace the swimming area in size and scope with an off-lake lagoon. The water district built that lagoon at their cost and provided, I believe, and I may have the number wrong, but about $1.5 million maintenance fund that would last so many years. We're now at the time when it's been over 10 years. We're now at the time where that lagoon needs major maintenance. And the purpose of the update today is to do an initial project for making it safer, because right now the sand that goes into the lagoon, which is a solid bottom, has changed the coloration at the bottom of the swim area, which makes it less safe for the lifeguards to be able to see in a crowded swim area. So the recommendation today you will hear is that first step, but there are future steps that are significant to redo a lot of work at this now more than 10-year-old facility. It was never anticipated that it would stay on without major maintenance in the future. But just to give you that background, it was a big struggle. We got completely the same amount of beach and the same amount of swim area replaced, but we did not no longer were allowed to have an open water swimming because of the category that the lake is now in as primary water source for the CCWD. So that's the background. It was a long, challenging period. We have been working well together with the Water District and with the Bureau, but as the board also knows, that facility will be transferred from the federal government by an act of the Congress to the Water District as fee title to the Water District. We anticipate that that transfer will occur sometime next year. Although the Congressional Act was approved, they haven't gone through the process yet with the transfer with the Bureau of Reclamation. So I wanted to give you that background and introduce Chief of Design and Construction, Lisa Gorgon, to make the detailed presentation, but I think that background is important.
Good afternoon, Lisa.
Good afternoon. Thank you, General Manager, and good afternoon, Directors, President Corbett. As General Manager Doyle said, my name is Lisa Gorgon. I'm the Chief of Design and Construction, and we wanted to talk to you today about needed repairs to the swim lagoon that's in Antioch, Eastern Contra Costa County. And I did first want to just mention, because I think it is a pretty relevant point, that the Park District has a goal of outreach and teaching children how to swim as both a recreational and a public health issue. So District Council reminded me drowning is the second leading cause of accidental deaths for children 1 through 14. And as municipal pools and swim education becomes a thing of the past, or it's fewer of them now, it's really, the district has a really critical role to play. And so by keeping this lagoon operational, it really helps us advance that goal. So I'm going to share my screen, which I do here in a moment. And how does that look? Okay. Okay, great.
Looks fine.
Okay, wonderful. So as General Manager mentioned, the reservoir was built in the 60s, and it's about 80 acres. It's pretty huge. And the swim lagoon was built about 17 years ago. And as part of that improvement project, for water quality and as part of removing the open water swimming. And we are responsible for the maintenance and operation of the lagoon. When the lagoon was built, one of the aspects of it that was added to kind of mimic the open water swimming was to have a beach area. And I'm just want to make sure that I have the right display. Let's see, is that still, can you still see that?
That's better. Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so the sand feature has a great, I'm getting lots of notes. So this is great. It's like you're presenting in real time. So people give you real feedback. So, so of course, so it's a really popular facility. It has over 60,000 visitors annually. And it's one of the few facilities in Eastern Contra Costa County. And the sand is a wonderful feature, but as Bob alluded to, as the general manager alluded to, it really is tough on operating the swim lagoon just because of the wear and tear that it that is and how the swim lagoon is impacted. So this is a photo. It looks like a graphic, but it's actually a photo, and you can begin to see in this photo areas where the surfacing has been worn away. This is a really problematic for operating because the lifeguards really rely on that contrast within the pool as their observation, as part of when they're doing their lifeguard, when they're on duty. So this, we did a repair project back in 2014 to repaint and waterproof the lagoon, but that lifespan only had about 5 years, and we've now exceeded that. And so it's time. So we know we need to make more repairs. One comment I would make is, in anticipation of the work that was done previously and recognizing that the lifespan of those repairs were going to be coming to an end, the district has engaged in a feasibility study to look at how the lagoon can be renovated to remove the sand, and also to have other ways to have that recreational value that the sand provides. The way that the bottom of the swim lagoon is constructed, there is a big curb, and so it holds the sand in. And so we just can't, as part of, to fix the existing repairs, we can't just remove the sand without making sort of other structural repairs to the bottom. So, and that's what this other feasibility study is looking at. And so when we have a draft recommendation, we will be coming back to the executive committee with that, but we don't have that today. So today we're really just here to talk about interim repairs that are needed so that when the shelter in place is ended, when it ends or when it gets modified to be sort of ended, the swim lagoon can be opened and operated. So again, this is just looking at some of where you can see the paint worn away. Some of the work that has been identified is to fully prep the surface by removing the old sealant, to do some surface repair, and also with the pumps, repair the coping and the tiling around the edges. And we have worked with our job order contractor, one of them that we've awarded a contract to give us some pricing. And so once we're able to proceed, we think that it can take about 3 to 4 months to get that done. One of the benefits is the repairs that we're looking to make will also contribute to future renovations that we know will be needed when we renovate the swim lagoon and do look at removing the sand. So it's work that we won't have to redo later. It's added value to future repairs or renovations that will be needed. And the good thing is the repairs that we're also looking at are expected to last an additional 8 to 10 years. And that gives us a little more time to fully vet and approve and scope what a renovation would be, and then to get funding for it. So working with the job contractor and our design and construction staff who are working on this, we think the estimated budget is about $725,000. we are recommending funding that through the Major Infrastructure Repair and Replacement Fund. And we recommend also looking at a cost share with the Bureau of Reclamation, both for this, but then also for the larger renovation work that's needed. But we think it's worth talking about this as well, because this certainly contributes to that larger major renovation that will be needed. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the availability of the Major Infrastructure Repair and Replacement Funds. We've worked with our finance folks to help us understand what's available and if there's funding available. And so we know that the current balance is about 11.8 million. And so for what we're looking at for these initial repairs, we feel confident there is funding available for these repairs. So the project costs that we're looking at are for the construction closer to 620,000, with then the design and permit fees being just over 100,000, and that's where we get our project budget. So I think just wanted to make sure to talk a little bit about larger infrastructure needs throughout the district. I mentioned the study that we're looking at right now about a major renovation to Contra Loma, because we know that's needed. We've also been in front of the board to talk about the work that we're doing at Roberts Pool to renovate Roberts Pool. So those are two other big projects that we are looking at grant funding, and also using portion of the Major Infrastructure and Repair, the 553. So I want to keep those in mind. And then also, we know that there's going to be work that's going to be needed at more of our resource facilities. So where I'm calling them resource swim facilities because they're sort of more of a natural resource rather than a constructed pool, or the swim lagoon, which we kind of think of as more of facilities. So they have less of a that natural resource component. But for today, we are asking for the executive committee to advance this item to the full board for consideration to appropriate the funds to do this work. So this would be work that we could, because we have jocked the pricing for it, we could advance it as soon as the board approved it and we have a notice to proceed, and start that work now, so that later in the summer, should a shelter in place be lifted, it would be ready to be operational. So that's all I have. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm not sure if Christina or our general manager has anything they want to add.
Yes, Mr. General Manager.
Yes, President Corbett, members of the board, the mention of the Bureau of Reclamation and funding, I think probably needs a response. I anticipate a question. We, government affairs staff and myself, had a call with the regional director of the Bureau of Reclamation. And we actually have 2 current grants from them that we probably applied for several years ago. And those are also current projects. Lisa can correct me, but I think one is a fishing pier and restroom improvements. It's about
Yes.
about 150,000 in grants. So we were told that based on what's going on in the federal government, that those existing grants could be threatened. So the original call was set up to make sure we advocate to get those grants. It appears because the transfer from the water district, from the Bureau to the water district is taking longer than they anticipated, that we can safely get those grants completed while the Bureau is still in ownership. That is our goal. We did raise the issue of long-term funding for Contra Loma. Of course, the Bureau did not construct the lagoon, but we certainly put that out there, and we said, should there be stimulus money or other funding or grants available to the Bureau, because the Bureau does do recreation in other areas that we'd like to get in line. But I would say it is clearly a lower priority for getting major grants from the Bureau when they no longer own or operate that recreation. So we knew that was going to be a problem when the transfer occurred. Of course, we could also ask the Contra Costa Water District to contribute. And in our liaison with them, they were talking some significant dollars just to repair the infrastructure in their system they're getting from the Bureau, such as the Contra Costa Canal, such as those pipes and things like that. So I would say at this point, until there's other sources of funding, like a Land and Water Conservation Fund, it would be very speculative to anticipate we would get additional money from the Bureau, but we certainly will put all our advocacy into putting that on our list to advocate for that. So I just wanted to give a caution on future money, but the current grants of about 160, 150,000 should be fine.
Thank you for that, Mr. General Manager. May I ask just a quick question on funding? What other types, where other places could we go for looking for funding at the time when we need to do more of an overhaul of this facility?
Well, the first place would be, obviously, we have our infrastructure fund, which will be overburdened, I'm sure, with all that when you look at the aquatic facilities. And I asked Lisa to give you the other aquatic facilities as part of this presentation, because those are some old, very big costs, and they're also a core value to this district. We have swimming is so essential. It's really a part of our mission. So money would have to be like from a state park bond. We were looking at Prop 68 for Roberts Park to help with some of that funding. But I think the reality check is that with the size of these projects for aquatic recreation upgrades, we probably, I mean, if you look at Lake Temescal with a full dredging at 30 million, 25 to 30 million, we're going to have to look elsewhere. And I would recommend that we start putting money into account specifically for aquatic restoration, and when we can do that. So we're going to have a discussion of the workshops next, so we can talk about that further.
Okay, thank you so very much. And before I go to the board, excuse me, AGM Kelchner.
Just a brief add that we will be talking to the Contra Costa Water District once they become the owner of this facility. And again, it's speculative, but our MOU with the Contra Costa Water District does say that if the water district has impacts on recreational facilities that they need to mitigate for, that might be one source of funding. And so they may need to close down the Contra Costa Canal Trail in order to do their repairs to their system, which I believe is a $90 million project, significant project for them. So the trail may need to be shut down for a while. And as mitigation, we could look to Contra Loma as a place for them to invest. So just one possibility we'll be looking at.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. And before I go to the board members, I just want to thank Lisa for an excellent presentation as well, with all the options and the future that we have to be thinking about. Thank you. Director Wieskamp or Rosario, anything you'd like to add, Director Wieskamp?
I guess I have a question. It seems to me that even if we do approve it immediately, it may not be available anytime this summer. that's going to be a big loss over in that part of the county. So I'm asking how fast they really think it could be accomplished. I'm thinking the earliest would be September.
Well, I think one thing, that's a great question. This is Lisa again. I think that when we were initially talking with our contractors, it was right at the beginning of shelter in place. And now things have changed. And I think that there may be an opportunity to ask about expediting some of the work. That is certainly what we're doing on some of the other projects, recognizing that we have this window where the parks are closed. So some of the parks we're doing work at Del Val for the water treatment system, and we are working on an accelerated schedule right now to try to get as much stuff work done prior to the park reopening. So this would be something I think we could revisit with our contractors.
I think that would be very good. September can be very hot, but it would be nice if they had at least August and September to use it. And who knows what's going to be happening with school schedule. So if it's available, it would be nice.
And it does create an opportunity with a later opening of the facility. This is a better time to be doing it. Right. Yeah. So there's once in a while you find a silver lining in all of this. Mr. General Manager.
Yes, members of the board, that if you really look at those pictures of the lagoon, you can see the pattern in that water that could resemble a person. And the way it's broken up, it's in pieces and it's very shaded. I consider this a safety emergency and it's our lifeguards and aquatics who said they really are concerned. They can't see the bottom in big crowds because of that shadowing with the sand. So I am 100% in favor of expediting this project, particularly while we have it closed. So I think it's really important for us to get this done as soon as possible.
Good.
Yeah. Director Rosario.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with the general manager. And I think I just want to express my kudos to our lifeguard service, lifeguards and the service in general, because I think we haven't had a drowning in our guarded facilities for over 9 years, and it goes to their professionalism and the care. And I think this project is essential, especially to that part of the county, and I would be in favor of it. And I'm also looking forward to creating a fund to set aside monies for the future. And also I want to talk to offline after this meeting with Lisa regarding Robert's Pool with the shelter in place. There's maybe we can save some money in redesigning the bathhouse at Robert's. So thank you. Yes, I'm in favor of going forward.
Yeah.
And you make an important, thank you very much, Director Rosario, and you make a very important point. Whenever we look at any of these facilities into the future, there's probably some additional planning that we need to think about with regard to distancing and other type issues, because this is going to be with us for a little while. I would also like to say this is such an important facility, and I think one of my most favorite parts about the facility, it is also a place where we have a very active junior lifeguard training program, which I think is another one of our, jewels of programs we have here at the district. A really great place for young people to learn about safety and start on their careers towards their future, with starting at the Park District and who knows, going on to wherever, maybe even becoming GM someday after being a lifeguard, right? I think we know somebody like that. So in any event, yeah, I see the importance of this, and kudos to our lifeguards who are so interested in making sure that they can safely protect the people that use that facility and advocate for this improvement at this project. Yes, AGM Kelchner. Oops, can't hear
I do see that Chief Chabura has joined us, so maybe in a moment
Oh,
if he
yeah.
wants to add anything from the lifeguards and public safety perspective. But before we ask him, I did just want to say something else about the JOC program. So the job order contracting program, one of the chief ways that we can expedite this is by using that program so that we don't have to spend extra weeks and sometimes months going out to bid. Because it's a maintenance project, so it comes squarely within the job order contracting program. I did just want to highlight to the board, we mentioned this at the Finance Committee last week, that will require an increase to the JOC contract. So at the beginning of the program, the beginning of the time period for JOC, beginning of the year, we calculate all of our projects, and then we authorize contracts that we think in the amount that we think we'll need to do those projects. This is an emergency project, it's an emergency repair. And so you'll see that item coming to the board along with this Contra Loma repair. So I just wanted to mention that. And it's just an important way for us to do the project quickly so that we can get it open as quickly as possible. And I also wanted to thank Ren Bates as the project manager who's been leading this project and knows the project very well. So just want to commend him to you if you have other technical questions about the project. And Chief Chabura, did you want to add anything to this conversation?
Hello, Chief. Thank you for
Hello.
joining.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Board of Directors and esteemed colleagues. I just wanted to thank everyone for their work, ranging from ASD to the Board of Directors to my fellow AGMs. This is a very important project, and I greatly appreciate the support you're demonstrating for our lifeguards. They do exceptional work, and we certainly want to put them in a position from which they can excel. So I thank you very much for your help and support.
Thank you very much. It seems like a no-brainer, huh? All right. Thank you very much. Would anybody, any additional comments, or would anybody like to make the motion to move this forward to the Board of Directors?
So moved.
Moved by Director Rosario.
Second.
Seconded by Director Wieskamp. We'd like to move the recommendation forward to repair the swim lagoon at Contra Loma Regional Park. All those, oh, I have to call the roll. Director Wieskamp.
Aye.
Director Rosario.
Aye.
Director Corbett, aye. That's a unanimous recommendation to move this forward to the Board of Directors. Thank you all very much. All right. Our next item, very apropos after this recent discussion we just had, the discussion about rescheduling our board workshops. And obviously we have great interest in the finance workshop moving forward because we have plenty of things to do. So thank you, Mr. General Manager. Please proceed.
Thank you very much. This will be a short presentation by me. It's just to bring forward the desire and a discussion with the Executive Committee on future workshops. You recently received an update from Assistant General Manager Christina Kelcher at the last board meeting on all of the capital projects that are still moving forward. And I'm extremely proud of the staff under these conditions to move those projects forward. But you have a large list, and and you've also had a Finance Committee meeting with a pending economic impact from the virus as well. We would like to recommend that this normal second workshop that is a board discussion of general priorities be postponed, and that we move forward with a finance capital workshop next. We will need a little bit of time to coordinate that and to be prepared, but we think that's critical right now with the pending financial downturn that's affecting so many people and will affect the Park District, and how we adjust our priorities. I think the presentation on aquatics is critical as well. We have facilities that are very old and very expensive to maintain, and they are really important facilities. So I think prior to having any mid-year discussion of the fund balance from last year, it would be and that may happen at Finance Committee first, it would be good to take both of those items and be thinking about what is critical to address financially and capital project wise. So that would be my recommendation, and then we'll start to schedule the other workshops after that. But I think the number one is finance and capital to get that context. We certainly want a strategic plan to protect the grants and funding from outside sources that we have. That may mean that some projects are expedited in front of others because that money may become at risk. So the really big issue with any grant funding is, encumber it, get out to bid, get the project moving. And so that's a strategy we've done many times in many recessions and before, but I think that's something before we make any of those recommendations, we want a full discussion with the full board.
Thank you very much, Mr. General Manager. I see some heads nodding. I think the directors on this committee are supportive of going forward with finance, and we understand the urgency. I hope too, though, with the board priorities, maybe it can be the next workshop after that, because I think it's important that we have a discussion there too, because obviously expectations and priorities are changing and understanding our new realities, and it would behoove us to have that come after the finance committee, because I think we'll have some serious discussions there that may impact what our priorities can be into the future or not. So yeah, I think everybody in support of that. That's a discussion item. Does anybody want to weigh in and say anything about that, or everybody just good with it? Director Weiss?
We absolutely have to do it as soon as possible. However, figure it out.
We want to make sure that you have the decisions in front of you, including how we protect staff and protect the benefits we provide for staff when we're looking at impacts at retirement programs and investments. I think it's really important. And so we want to put that all together and have those discussions.
Yes, I think we all agree with you, Mr. GM. On Finance Committee, we've seen some of the very serious predictions with regard to investments and such. And that seems like months ago now. But in fact, I think we were all live when we had that first discussion. We were all together when we had that first discussion. So yeah, I think we all understand we have some very serious things to protect and people to protect and continue to do our mission under a lot of stress and strain and new ways of doing business. So yeah, absolutely. So Dee had his thumb up too. So proceed. Everybody's good with that.
We'll work with the board on scheduling that. It will be a couple of weeks at least, because we're going to have to put all the program together. So we'll make sure when that pending timing is and work with the calendars on that.
Okay, that sounds good. We probably might have some spots open on our schedule. Thanks to some other meetings that didn't go forward. So in any event, all right, thank you very much. It is very serious and we need to take a look at that. Thank you. We're all here and ready to do that. Thank you. All right, I'd like to ask that we go to the next item on the agenda, which is public comments. Do we have any additional public comments, Madam Secretary?
President Corbett, at this time, I have no additional public comments.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. And now it's the time for board comments. Director Wieskamp, do you have any comments?
Question. Maybe it's a multiple question. Do we have any sense of direction on when pools or lakes will be allowed to have swimming? And do we have a process that we would have the lifeguards available to service those? And if you don't have the answer now, that's fine. But people have been asking me about swimming.
Yes.
And they've been trying to swim at Shadow I can tell you that. So
yes, we heard about that.
Yes. And so I think
taking a hike.
We're thinking about it, but I don't know. And so I'm asking the question.
Mr. GM.
Yes, the first thing I think Tony's still here, and I just want to say that with the existing staffing in lifeguard services, they are prepared when we're ready. The issue is we are not going to be able to open everything. So do we open Del Val? And that's such a huge park. So I would say right now, consistent with my comments at the last board meeting, the first priority is to relax picnic areas so people can go picnicking again, because it's been really hard on staff to maintain that. The second priority is really to open up more parks. But I think aquatic facilities for this summer is critical. We're putting together a feasibility plan of how we staff that. And again, we won't be able to staff everything, but I know that lifeguard services has been getting ready. They won't have all the seasonal, but they do have people on the list ready to come back, and they're trained. So we know that's a high priority, let me put it that way. And so we can move forward more information to the board in the very near future. But we don't know when it'll be lifted. The issue that we know, I mean, Robert's Pool is just kind of the obvious example. It's really hard when you have a crowded pool to keep kids apart from each other and adults. So we've got to figure out a way to space people. And so that will be part of the requirement. But it's possible that come June that you definitely will see more recreational use relaxed. I can't predict exactly which ones.
So I have a follow-up on that. In the EOC, there have, of course, has been discussion on, moving forward after we're out of the emergency period and, reoperating, so to speak. Have we put together, are we starting to put together plans for, for swimming facilities in a new way? Are we working on those plans?
Well, obviously staff's pretty busy just trying to get the parks open again, but they are, and I believe, I don't know, I can check and see if the chief is still here. I don't see him on.
But did need to go to another call.
Okay, but we'll give a report back to the board as soon as possible. That is something we have been discussing. And you will have additional facilities open this weekend too, which we'll give you that information. We don't want to formally announce it because there'll be a rush, a gold rush. But we are opening up more facilities starting this weekend and moving forward the next week. And so we will provide that information. That was, I believe, discussed yesterday at the task force. Dee, is that true? The plan for reopenings. But we'll come up with options on the swimming as well.
And I would just add also in being present at the EOC, the lifeguards have been extremely busy and involved in putting together safety kits and PPE kits and making sure that all of those items in the first part of our rollout under the emergency were available and moved out to all of our various different parks and divisions, and they did an extremely good job of organizing all of that. So just want to compliment them. Even though pools aren't open, they've been very, very busy doing lots of important things.
They have.
So, yeah. So thank you, Director Wieskamp. Director Rosario, any closing comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Christina and her department for a very thorough EIR report and a summary. It made for really good, easy reading. And I appreciate all the work that went into it. These things are complex, and to make it enjoyable to read is even better. Who knows? 5 years ago, I wouldn't have said that. But they're easy to follow. They're referenced very easily. So I applaud you and your staff on a great report. And on the naming, I just ask the public to have patience, and we'll get through this process. We don't take these things lightly. And then as far as opening parks, I want to assure people that we are keeping in mind that our park staff has to be safe too, and social distancing in their work sites has to be as part of the formula for opening a park. And so we need to keep our employees safe as well as the public, and so patients there as well. So, so final word is just stay safe, use our parks, but use them responsibly. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Rosario. I would like to close by saying Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there, those on the screens and those that are listening in. Enjoy your Mother's Day, but please remember, if you do go to the parks, please, we so appreciate you working with us to follow all of the important rules. Bring your masks, please put them on. Social distancing, 6 feet apart. Bring some hand sanitizer with you, bring your water. You know, be safe out there, and help us help you make sure that you continue to be able to enjoy our beautiful parks. And please, if you have the opportunity to have conversations with some of our amazing committed staff, please know that they're contacting you to give you important messages to keep you safe. And please thank them for the work that they're doing while they're, you know, making sure that you're safe. So with that, if there's no other comments, I would like to adjourn our executive committee meeting. Thank you all very much, everybody. Take care. Happy Mother's Day.
You too.
Thank you.